Shabbat Shalom. These past 2 weeks, we have all felt all the feelings of war in Israel. We are heartbroken and hurt and angry and anxious and afraid. One feeling that I didn't expect. I love hearing their voices, so let her cry or him cry. One feeling that I didn't expect, it's lonely. It's lonely. In particular, in the circles of my life that are less explicitly Jewish than this one, I have encountered uneven acknowledgement of the war. While my closest friends of all faiths have been loving, and I am so grateful for their presence and care, their loud voices of love have made the silence of others that much more intense and hard. People and groups with whom I share pieces of myself, my love of music or law or animals or nerdy, whatever it is, my commitment to causes, my values, and other aspects of my identity. Too many seem to have gone on with the second week of October, as if nothing had changed, as if nothing happened to me, as if nothing happened to my family, as if nothing happened to my people. Yes, we are oversaturated with the world's sorrows. And no, we can't expect everyone to read every headline, and we can't feel all of the world's pain. But when our friends, when our heroes are silent at the very time when we need them to speak up, we feel the only right word I can think of is abandoned. We question if our friends are really our friends, and we question if our heroes are really our heroes. It's lonely, and I know that I am not alone in my loneliness. Last Sunday, after morning minyan and our boisterous and beautiful first day of religious school, I spent a few hours here making phone calls and rehearsing for the musical service that we had last night. And at the end of the day, I walked out into our lobby right there, and the shul looked like hundreds of children and their parents had been through it in the best way. The little water bottles, little snacks, little fidget spinners all left behind. And a woman walked up to those doors, and I'll share her story anonymously. Let's call her, who has a name? Okay, so let's say Naomi. Naomi walked in, her arms folded into a warm, puffy vest, and she sat and leaned forward, and her hair was in her eyes, and it looked like she'd been crying. And I learned that she's Jewish, not a member of Bethel, not a member of any synagogue. Her adult son made Aliyah, moved to Israel to become a citizen of Israel, moved to Israel recently, and is enlisting in the Israeli army right now. She is far away from him, farther than she's ever been, and she is terrified. And she didn't know what to do, where to go, but her instinct was also clear. She didn't know quite what to ask for, but she knew she needed shul. She knew she needed, on some level, she knew she needed us. She needed someone to sit with her and listen. And I'm so proud that before I got there, a kind member of our community welcomed her in and sat with her. And I was honored to continue that conversation later. And I hope that she answers the email that I sent so we can keep supporting her. She's asked to be connected to other families who have lone soldiers in Israel, parents of lone soldiers. I know that I cannot make, we call her Naomi, I cannot make Naomi's son safe. We can't make him safe. But what we can do is offer our presence and our care and our love to his mom. What we can do is offer this beautiful community. We cannot take away her fear, but we can make sure that she is not alone in it. Loneliness. The antidote to loneliness is community. This is it. Many of us need to be here because out there, where we work or where we volunteer or at the grocery store or at the gym or the community garden, last week was just the second week of October. When I imagine that for others, it could have just been the second week of October, I feel lonely, and I know that I'm not alone in my loneliness. We are lonely when we remember what we have always known, that some people hate us for being Jewish. Some people condone or justify or stay silent when we are injured, when we are taken captive, when we are murdered. You might have heard the number that made me jump out of my skin, that more Jews were murdered on October 7th than on any single day since the Holocaust. October 7th happens to be my birthday. And it was the first time that I didn't wish that my grandfather could have been there with me to mark that day. My grandfather was a Holocaust survivor. He lost his parents by the age of 14, and then he lost his sister just days before the end of the war. Almost everyone in his town, almost everyone in his family, everyone he knew was murdered by people who hate Jews. And when I imagine his loneliness, it breaks my heart. And thank God he didn't have to be here today. Whether by direct lineage or as part of the collective Jewish people, we are all the children and the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren of the Holocaust. In a world that often wants to move on with it already, it's lonely to insist on remembering. It's lonely to insist on remembering that people hate us. And the antidote to that loneliness is community. In a few weeks, on November 9th, we will gather to commemorate Kristallnacht, the 85th anniversary of Kristallnacht, which literally means Night of the Broken Glass. It's to mark when the pogroms happened in Nazi Germany in 1938. And it's a night that has come to symbolize the beginning of the anti-Semitism that led to the Holocaust. If Survivors and their children are lonely in remembering. Our young people are lonely too today. The little ones we know in this community have seen hate speech and symbols written on school desks and graffiti written on the walls of schools and in public spaces. Hate speech from their friends in person or through social media. And our college students confront a kind of anti-Semitism with an intensity that those of us who were born in the 1900s have never seen before. If they seek friendship or affiliation with a liberal student group or a more liberal group of friends, they are subjected to a litmus test when people find out they're Jewish. So you're Jewish? Are you a Zionist? So you're Jewish. Do you support Israeli apartheid? And in recent days, some form of that lie that spread all too quickly, do you support bombing hospitals? Which, of course, we know wasn't true, but it got spread. Those words and all these words and all that I'm saying today it's painful to say and repeat, and so I hesitate to further amplify it. But I do want to say that we are connected to our college students, and we're supporting them and making sure they have community here and on campus so they know that they're not alone. Today, people who hate Jews justify the atrocities of terrorists. They use language that might sound like criticism of the state of Israel, but not well hidden under those words. We hear those same old tropes about Jewish power. People who hate Jews murdered 6 million of us, or stood by for years of death marches and firing squads and the camps and the gas chambers. And people who hate Jews before that joined the pogroms, the expulsion of Jews from Arab lands, and the Inquisition, and the Crusades, and the oppression that happened during the times of the Roman Empire. They believed the lie that Jews killed the Christian God. They knew we were suffering, yet they joined in the violence, or they failed to stop it. This is all too much for one heart to hold. At least it's too much for my one heart to hold. It's too much to hold alone. But I know that I'm not alone. I'm here this morning with all of you in our community Shabbat service. And this is our tradition. This tradition helps to get us through. And the teachings from our tradition also help to get us through. As if anticipating our despair today, a despair that is, of course, mixed with so much joy. I don't want to take away from the incredible joy that we felt this morning, proud of our B'nai Mitzvah, of course. As if anticipating our pain, this morning we read from the Torah the original story of the end of the world, the original worst-case scenario. God destroys the world in a flood. And other cultures have flood stories as well. We have, for example, the Epic of Gilgamesh flood story. And I think these flood stories respond to something that is a human need to work through this idea emotionally. Because it's all too much for one heart to hold. In our worst case scenario in the Torah, God takes care of Noah, warning him and helping him to survive the flood, guiding him and also empowering him along the way. God says, Aselecha tevat atse gofer. Make for yourself an ark of gopher wood. God says, here is how you'll make it through. Here is the plan. Here is the length and the width and the height of the ark that you need to build. In other words, this is what you need to do to be safe. We read that too this morning in the Torah. Like a parent explaining to a child, this is how you call 911. This is what you do in the case of a fire. This is what you do for an earthquake, or other kinds of things we have to prepare our children for. God speaks clearly and calmly to Noah about the end of the world. In our Torah, we read the story of maybe the loneliest time in Jewish history. Maybe human history. Civilization was wiped out. One person had to hide in an ark with his build and then hide in an ark with his family. And this is the story of ours that I've heard many times since Noah. We've all heard different versions of this story. Replace ark with attic or bunker. And we needn't even reach for metaphor. It's right there. It's our story. The rest of the Torah and the rest of Jewish history is surviving and rebuilding together. I'll take that as agreement. The antidote to loneliness is community. Last week, we gathered every day in a new way at vigils and lunchtime conversations and in classrooms with our religious school students, in a beautiful Friday night service led by Chazan Fradkin. The chapel was overflowing. We were standing room only. It was so beautiful. We were filled to the brim with love and solidarity and prayers. And the next week, more gatherings, more teaching, more space. We had a beautiful service last night. And we're here this morning celebrating 2 amazing B'nai Mitzvah. And that is how we really know on a day like today that we are not alone in our loneliness. The antidote to loneliness is exactly what we have right now, our community. Shabbat Shalom.